Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Danvers Zoning Board of Appeals. We are now in session, and I would ask that you turn off your cell phones or silence any electronics you have, so we're not interrupted. I'll start by introducing our board. Down to my right is Jeff Sauer, Becky Kilborn. Our clerk tonight is Ken Scholes. Myself, John Bowner, I am the chair. Ken Jarvinen. And our alternate down the end is Corrine Doherty. Our procedure, and from our planning department, Georgia Pendergrass over there, also Vanna White and everything else she possibly can do over there with all the electronics, DJ, all this. Do we have anyone online? Is Aaron? No, no one's joining us. Okay. Could I get a motion to accept minutes from meetings May 9th, June 13th, and July 25th?
So moved.
I'll second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we got that out of the way. So just to explain our process, I would ask, again, we're on Danvers Cable. Please, when you present your application, come up to the microphone there, identify yourself and address if you're a resident. Present your application to us. From there, the board will ask questions of you. We'll go down and ask each member. And at that point, we'll close this portion of the meeting. We'll go out to the public if you're here to speak. Again, go to the microphone and identify yourself. If you're going to go up to the screen, please take the microphone with you, because I've noticed on some of the playbacks we don't get the audio, and it's important for our minutes. From that point, I will close the public hearing. It'll come back. The board will deliberate at that point, and we will be able to tell you what your options are from there based on the deliberation from the board members. If you do want to vote and your application is denied, you must wait 2 years before reapplying. So just so you know that piece of it. And I think that's about it. I'm going to jump the agenda a little bit, as we have two separate applications for both 42 and 44 Summer Street, as well as 42 Summer Street alone. So with that said, did I get everything? Go ahead, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first case is 42-44 Summer Street. This is zoned R2. Request for a special permit in accordance with Section 30 and for a finding in accordance with Section 3.12 of the Danvers Zoning Bylaw to allow the expansion of an existing grandfathered nursing home / memory care facility use to accommodate 30 additional nursing beds. Request is made by Danvers MC Owner LLC and Gambrell LLC, docket 22-4987. And the second case is 42 Summer Street, also zoned R2. Request for a dimensional variance from Table 2 of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow the creation of a new single-family house lot with 8,636 square feet of land area where 20,000 square feet is required. Request is also made by Danvers MC Owner LLC and Gambrell LLC, docket 22-4990. And, Mr. Chairman, we are in receipt of a letter from Attorney McCann requesting to continue these two cases to our September 12th meeting.
Okay.
So moved.
I have a motion and a
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move that to September 12th. Go right ahead to the next one.
All right, our next case is 13 Pope's Lane. This is a highway zone corridor, highway corridor zoning. Request for a finding in accordance with Section 3.10.c of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow the substitution of a non-conforming use in place of the existing residential non-conforming use, to allow the use of a property for industrial warehouse purposes, and to the extent necessary, a request for a use variance from Table 1 of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow the construction of a fully conforming industrial warehouse building containing 32,000 square feet in the highway corridor zone. Request is made by Huntington Development LLC, docket 22-4989. And, Mr. Chairman, we are in receipt of 4 separate letters. 2 of the letters have no address or name attached to them. These are all in opposition, by the way. The first one we have is from the owner of 10 Pope's Lane, which is the Maniza family. They're in opposition. And the second letter that has a name is from the owner of 15 Pope's Lane, and it's Jared Waterman.
Very good. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Nancy McKee, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Conant Street Realty LLC being the owner, and Huntington Development LLC the applicant. With me tonight is Milan Patel from Huntington Development LLC. Also with me tonight is Taylor Dowdy, the project engineer. And we are here to discuss the property located at 13 Pope's Lane. This property is located in the Highway Corridor zoning district. And we are requesting a finding in order to substitute non-conforming uses. We currently have a 2-family use, which is a non-conforming use in the Highway Corridor zone. And we are requesting a finding in order to substitute a new non-conforming use, which is an industrial warehouse in its place. In the alternative, we have also requested a use variance in order to allow the industrial warehouse use in this zoning district. The existing property is approximately 2 acres. We have about 151 feet of frontage on Pope's Lane. Again, as I indicated, there's an existing non-conforming 2-family dwelling. The residential use is non-conforming in the Highway Corridor zone, and the structure itself, the building, is also non-conforming, being 8.5 feet from the setback where 25 feet is required. The proposal is to remove that existing dwelling and replace it with a fully conforming commercial building. That is a building that has been designed to fit within this site and to meet all of the setback requirements. The layout also meets all of the parking requirements as proposed. The Highway Corridor zoning district, as this board knows, was set up to accommodate large businesses, retail-type businesses, office-type businesses, commercial businesses, including assembling, manufacturing, and uses that take, in some cases, particularly as they relate to retail and offices, take not only visibility that this site doesn't have from the main traveled way, that being Route 1, and also large parking fields. And in this case, we've got a site that is irregularly shaped, has topographic issues, as you can see from the topo lines on the existing conditions plan, as well as wetland impacts. What the bylaw does allow, however, is self-storage, and it allows self-storage/warehouse. But then there is a second section of the zoning chart that does not allow industrial warehousing in this zoning district. It seems somewhat counterintuitive as to why that happened, and whether it happened intentionally or not. I would tend to doubt that, but that's what we have to work with. So I did discuss this with the zoning administrator, and it was determined that an industrial warehouse, while warehouse/self-storage is permitted, industrial warehouse itself is not permitted, and therefore that's why we're here this evening. The finding that we are requesting is to allow the substitution of the nonconforming use under section 3.10C of the zoning bylaw to allow this new use, which is the industrial warehousing on this site, in place of the nonconforming residential use. And the proposal itself eliminates a nonconformity by eliminating the nonconforming structure and replacing that with a fully conforming structure. So the proposal, while we're looking to substitute one nonconforming use for another, actually eliminates and brings the property more into conformance by proposing a structure that is fully conforming. In the alternative, we are requesting a variance to allow this to allow the industrial warehousing. Again, as I indicated, self-storage and general warehousing is permitted, but to allow the industrial warehousing on this site due to the shape, topography, soil conditions of the site, the lack of visibility, making it difficult to use this property for other uses that are permitted in the highway corridor zone, and without actual access to Route 1 or to Route 95. The use, since similar uses are permitted in this zoning district, it fits in with uses that are permitted. Again, I don't know if it was intentionally omitted to not allow industrial warehousing, but you do allow in this zoning district assembling, processing, manufacturing, the types of uses that, in fact, as we've been trying to market this property for uses in the highway corridor zone, typically call for some sort of warehousing. So we want to make sure that we're able to accommodate those needs. Again, I'm going to turn this over now to Taylor Dowdy from BSC Group, the project engineer. The building, the layout is fully conforming. So we are not requesting zoning relief with regard to the building or the layout, simply with regard to the industrial warehousing use itself. So, Taylor?
Hi, good evening. Taylor Dowdy with BSC Group. Nancy did a great job representing the existing conditions plan, and you can like she said, you can clearly see the topography on this site. It is certainly a challenge. If you could go to the next slide, perhaps, or the next page. This is perfect. So we've been able to place a 16,000 square foot footprint building, 2 floors for 32,000 square feet. With loading zones on the bottom floor, which is closer closer to Pope's Lane, and then the upper floors you go up the driveway, and there's more loading and parking spaces to access the upper level. There's 42 total parking spaces, which do meet the minimum required per zoning. We are prescribing for infiltration and recharge and stormwater quality features on this site to clean the water prior to discharge. We are meeting the 10 prescribed standards as per the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook published by Mass DEP. As far as utilities goes, we are pulling all the utilities off of Pope's Lane. We are working with the respective utility companies now, mostly electric is what I'm thinking of, to bring the proper electric service to the site. Truck access. Trucks can clearly turn around and access the loading zones at the front of the property and at the rear of the property. Most likely, due to ease of use, they will be going to Route 1 up to the top right of the page. That's the easiest path there, rather than taking a right out of the site and going the long way through everything else. But clearly, we have the proper radii on the driveway, and I'm happy to entertain any questions everyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Doty.
This project obviously will have to go through site plan approval with the planning board. And we are aware that some letters, as was the clerk read into the record, we do have some letters in opposition to this project. Those letters, I've read them, and I appreciate Georgia sending those over to me, really raised issues with regard to site plan type of issues, not specifically related to the use for industrial warehousing. So the issues that were raised in those letters, while certainly valid questions and concerns, would be addressed at the planning board level during site plan approval. Again, the building, as Taylor has just reviewed it with you, is fully permitted. So the request that we have is for allowing industrial warehousing here. which we think certainly would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than other types of uses that are permitted in this zoning district. And I've listed off a few of them that would have certainly a great deal of traffic associated with them and other things associated with them that wouldn't be present here with industrial type of warehousing that's being proposed. I do have a letter of support from Mantor Realty LLC and Mantor Co. Inc. I, the undersigned neighbor of the property located at 13 Popes Lane, am in favor of the proposed construction of the new 32,000 square foot industrial building with 42 parking spaces. I reviewed the plans prepared by BSC Group and Gynap Architects, and we did submit building elevation drawings to you as well, and believe the proposal will be a great addition to our community. And the developer has met with the Mantor property owner. I think that is it for our presentation this evening, and I and Taylor would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just before I turn it over to the board, so I just want to be clear, the structure you're proposing would be conforming for highway corridor zoning, correct?
It is fully compliant, yes.
Fully complying. But it's the use that you're looking for relief on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we would like to have industrial warehousing here. We have several prospective tenants for this property. One, for example, and I can't disclose names at this point, but is an assembling manufacturing business that is existing along Route 1 already and is looking for some warehousing space.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to understand, maybe a better definition of industrial warehousing. So we're not talking about self-storage, we're talking about small manufacturing, that type of use.
Had I been talking about self-storage, we wouldn't be here,
Right,
because
'cause that's
self-storage is
allowed,
permitted.
Right, yeah.
Warehousing and industrial warehousing under the zoning bylaw is defined as a building used for storage of goods and materials.
Okay. All right, well, I have some additional questions, but I'm going to turn it over to the board, and if they don't get asked, I'll ask them at the end. So, Jeff, let's start down there with you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Nancy, I looked over the zoning bylaw, and I couldn't get a clear picture as to an industrial warehouse versus a regular warehouse. I understand what self-storage is, but, yeah, if you had any,
What's the question?
yeah,
Question?
Have I had any success in
in figuring that out?
I have had conversations with the town planner and the zoning administrator, and as I indicated, it is not clear that this was an intentional omission, but in the bylaw where you see self-storage and warehousing, that's in one category, and then there's a separate section of the use chart that has at the top of the entire chart, industrial, and under that, you find warehousing. And is
Not
that
allowed in-
different, is that different from the warehousing that's permitted above on the other section of the
Yeah.
chart? It's not so clear.
Okay.
But the use clearly for, as I said, a building used for storage of goods and materials certainly seems to fit well within this zoning district and the uses that are permitted in this zoning district, including self-storage / warehouse.
Can you give me a sense as to where the boundary of the highway corridor zone lands in this neighborhood?
It includes this entire island that is Pope's Lane between 95 and Route 1.
Okay, so those three properties in the lower left there are included in the highway district?
Highway corridor, yes.
And do they have some non-conforming uses?
Yes. I believe the immediately abutting residential, any residential use is non-conforming because
okay.
residential uses are not permitted in the
Okay.
highway corridor zone.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you be willing to kind of describe the driveways and the access and how trucks are going to get in and out of this location, and the size of trucks you're anticipating, the type of trucks?
Thank you.
Can pull the microphone out perhaps and walk to the screen?
Yeah, yes, please.
It may be easier.
There might be a pointer under there too,
Underneath.
sometimes.
I think it's taped down, I think.
That's okay. So,
You can walk over there.
Yeah, you can take the
I don't
mic with,
even-
no, take the mic with you.
As much as you can.
It's taped
Oh.
down, you can't drag it over there.
So generally speaking, SU-40 type trucks can navigate the site. The small tractor trailers, which are 53 feet, can navigate the site adequately. They would pull in, they can do their maneuvering in here, unload, load, whatever they need to do, and then they would pull out and head off to Route 1 in this direction. Same thing for the upper parking lot. There's plenty of room to navigate back up to the loading doors.
I don't understand the driveways. I guess that, I don't see where the driveways are,
No problem.
or the roadway.
So here, Pope's Lane is right here.
Right, I understand that.
Here's our site driveway is right here. Oops, thank you.
Okay,
Site driveway is right here. To access the lower area, what I call the lower floor,
okay.
you pull into here. This area is separate. This is curbed, and it has a retaining wall here. There's a retaining wall on this side, and then to drive, this is a ramped driveway, and then you drive up to the second floor area.
And how wide is that driveway?
I will find out. It should be dimensioned on a previous plan. I believe it's at least 24 feet.
This 25-foot side yard, typical.
I could scale it, but I didn't, it's not on the plan.
Twenty-four feet, that's right. It is 24 feet.
24 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's easily allows two-way access.
Okay, so is it your intention that the entire upper area there would also be paved?
Yes, that's correct.
And you said something about going directly to Route 1?
Yes, it's anticipated, rather than if a truck were to come out of the driveway,
Yes,
rather than take a right, which would be the long way and through the rest of the properties along Pope's, the easiest path would be to take a left out of the driveway and go right up to Route 1 here.
Okay.
It's a direct shot.
okay, so you're not intending to access from the top?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not in-
That's why I wasn't clear.
There's a trailer
Cor-
park
yeah,
up there
right.
too. They
What?
couldn't, there's a trailer park up and behind
Yeah,
there. They
yeah,
couldn't do
okay.
that.
Okay. Okay. And these are probably questions for Nancy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So is it you anticipate this being a multi-tenanted building?
It may be,
It could be,
maybe, or may not. It might be one tenant that needs the entire space
okay,
for the warehousing, otherwise it could be multiple tenants.
okay. And the letters somewhat they had concern about the construction more than the actual use.
Yes. And
Can,
that's under the regulation of site plan
right,
approval. Site plan approvals has standard conditions attached to it
Okay.
that limit the hours of construction.
okay, okay. And, so finding versus variance, you want one or the other, and without really knowing what you intend, who's gonna be in there, what kind of trucks they're gonna have, what kind of access they're gonna need, how many times a day they're gonna be in and out of there, it's difficult to do a finding, I think, and maybe you can speak to that, but, you know, we're saying it's not substantially more detrimental, but we can't, I don't see how we can make that determination without having more information.
Thus, the reason why I asked for the use variance in the alternative.
Okay,
There are two different ways to permit this.
right,
Because there's a non-conforming use, we can substitute another non-conforming use under section 310.
okay,
Or we can request the use variance which is what we've done as well. Higher standard from a legal standpoint, but also makes sense here when you're looking at a zoning chart and you're seeing
And
that
it's
the
very
uses are
gray.
permitted here. This is very much in keeping with the uses that are permitted in this district. And I would suggest that any type of access into this building for industrial warehousing is not going to be any different than a permitted use of assembling and processing, for example. Could be significantly less.
Right. It's hard to know. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
That's all I
you. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is strictly warehouse. There will be no manufacturing done in this building.
That's right. What's being proposed is industrial warehousing for this building, and that's what the parking chart that you've been given is predicated upon.
Okay, so like I'm saying, you know, oh, let's set up a workshop in the corner here, and we'll do some manufacturing too, and it's gonna be strictly warehouse, correct?
That's what this variance is, yes.
What's the hours of operation of this place? Like, can we have trucks coming in all hours of the night just to drop stuff off?
You could, and you could in any of the facilities along Pope's Lane or in the highway corridors. Danvers allows 3 shifts. Danvers does not limit when businesses can operate in the town. It could,
Well,
but
my
it
only
doesn't.
concern with that is that there's residential homes near
Yep.
there, so that's the only reason I asked that. I guess that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ken?
So do we know which came first, the the residences or the industrial buildings? I mean, so it's an industrial area and a residential area. So which was first? And that may be a question for Georgia.
Yeah,
Through.
so I do have in my notes, 15, 17, and 23 Pope's Lane were approved via variance. I would have to get more details. 2 of those were in 1958, and then one of those was in the 90s. And as for when the buildings were put in, I will need to find out. But I can confirm that the 3 homes at 15, 17, and 23 were approved via variance from the ZBA.
In the 1950s, well, 2 of them were.
2 of them, 1958, 1 in the 90s.
Yeah, okay.
And that was zoned highway corridor in 58?
Yeah, or it was not
Oh,
zoned for
no.
at the time, it could have been, we didn't have highway
didn't
corridor at
have
the
highway.
Didn't
time.
have that,
Okay.
right?
It was probably commercial,
Or industrial.
but it was not residential.
And so that seems like an awful lot of spaces for it, but that's as per the parking protocol?
Yes.
That is what, because it seems like that would be more for like retail or something. Seems like there's an awful lot.
Retail would be considerably more. And
Yeah.
again, that's where the topography argument for a variance comes into play. Because of the topography of this site, it does not lend itself to uses that take large parking fields, which are typical highway corridor uses, often take large parking fields. A sports facility, an athletic center, for example, is a permitted use in the highway corridor zone and could go here, but the parking is much more for something like that. Same thing with retail, which is typically 5 spaces per 1,000. So you need a lot more parking spaces, and the topography and the site shape also is unusual and doesn't lend itself well to that. This type of use, we can design the building and the parking to fit the site and the site constraints.
So was there any issues? Did you have to go to Concom for anything?
I believe we will. We've got the wetland buffer zone line is there. We will be seeking an order of conditions, not a variance, but an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission to allow work within the buffer zone, which is typically permitted.
Okay, thanks.
One second.
Yep.
Corinne?
It states on the application that the Conant Street Realty LLC is the owner and the applicant is Huntington Development LLC. What is the relationship between those 2 entities?
The applicant is the prospective purchaser, contract purchaser, under agreement to purchase the property.
Okay. Do you know what the purchase price is?
I don't think it's relevant.
Um,
And I don't know.
Was
How about
there-
that?
Was there ever a discussion by the prospective buyer to buy all 3 of those residential properties? Or just the one property in particular?
I don't know the answer to that. Millen, are they even for sale? I don't know.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. Attorney McCann, so this parking spaces are determined by the building size in this case? Or
I-
the use, or both?
Where's Taylor? Yep. It's typically square footage and employees.
Here we go. So it's primarily determined by employees, as you can see from this calculation. And
So, and the expectation is there'll be how many employees on site? 3? Is that what I'm seeing?
2 spaces per 3.
Or 2 per 3, I'm sorry, okay.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's really unknown at this point. I mean, it's mostly, and I may have misspoke, it's, I said primarily determined by employees. We'd only need 3 if we were going with employees. It's, obviously determined by both. I have a hard time believing that 42 spaces would ever be filled in an industrial.
All right, I guess my question though, is I'm trying to understand, is what is our bylaw asking for? What's the calculation? I'm sure there is one. I just don't know.
It's exactly this, under the required space line, 2 spaces per 3 employees, and then 1,000 square feet.
Okay,
One
so it's
space per 1,000
employees,
square feet.
it's employees as well as building size?
Correct.
Okay, got it, got it. And what impact on the trailer park up above? I know you said, obviously there's wetland here. What, I do see on the plan, there's a retaining wall. Just looking at the topography there, I mean, that looks like quite a wall that's gonna have to go up. How is that,
That's-
I guess walk me down how that, process would occur during construction.
Sure.
I imagine that's early on, correct?
Most likely, that's one
Yeah.
of the first items of construction to happen after
Stormwater.
erosion controls are
Yeah,
installed, most
okay.
likely. So, yeah, they would have to excavate down to the parking grade, install the wall up.
And what kind of height are we looking at with this retaining wall?
I can look that up.
I'm imagining pretty tall.
Yeah, that retaining wall ranges anywhere from, I think at 9 feet would be the tallest in the corner near the trash enclosure, and tapering down to 1 foot at the top.
Okay, so 9 feet at its height, at its max?
Yeah, and that's only for a small section. Very quickly, it's down to
And then
5.
obviously stormwater management and all that behind it.
Yeah, the stormwater management is within the parking fields, that's correct.
Okay. And Attorney McCann, would your applicant be willing to take a restriction on deliveries not after 11 PM?
Yes, he would take a restriction. No deliveries between 11 PM and 5 AM.
7 AM? It seems pretty reasonable, given that we have a town bylaw of a trash pickup not prior to 7 AM.
Well, there's also the town bylaw that permits uses like this to operate 24 hours. I don't think there's a similar restriction on Bitcon that's across the street, although we have a representative of Bitcon, he can probably tell
Well,
us that.
I understand that, but
Or
I
Mantor.
do see that we have residents here too, so I'm
Well-
trying to see how can we play this,
7
all play
seems
nice.
much later. 6? He could deal with 6.
11 to 6
11 to 6,
as a condition?
yeah.
Okay. don't think I have any additional questions. Anybody else on the board have additional questions?
Not now.
Okay, I'm gonna turn this over for public comment. If you would like to be heard, please come raise your hand. I'll call you up and come up to the podium. And this is for 13 Pope's Lane. Yep, back there on the left.
Good evening. My name is Jared Waterman. I live at 15 Pope's Lane. Obviously, I wrote one of the letters. I'm the resident, like I said, I'm the resident of 15 Pope's Lane. I'm also a town meeting member for Precinct 2, which this is included in. And I'm also a police officer here in the town of Danvers. Just a little history on the neighborhood. I purchased my home in 2001, 20 years ago. At that time, I know I can't take it all the way, but so this was a residence, this was a residence, this was a residence, that was a residence, that was a residence, and there were 2 residences over here. The original family that owned the area, the gentleman was living in this house in the rental unit on the right side, and he was renting out the house itself. When I bought this home, his brother-in-law was deceased. He had just passed away. There's a granite walkway that goes between these houses. My house was his sister and his brother-in-law. This was his brother and his sister-in-law. And then there were 2 more homes down that way. When I bought the home, and I know it can't be held to this standard, the realtor at the time kind of did it the old-fashioned way. I was at the barber shop. I found out he used to go to my barber when he passed away, and the barber had known of the family and that they were trying to get rid of the property. At the time, I was advised by my neighbor on the other side that it was zoned commercial residential, was the terminology he used. Obviously, I can't be held to that. He wasn't a real estate agent or anything like that. So I took residence in my home. I've raised my family here. I have 3 boys. My wife and I have done the best we can to make it a home and make it a residence. I understand that it's zoned the way it is. But we've got a nice little setup here. The next 2 properties that came along were my neighbor at 17 and at 19, and they're here tonight. They're small construction companies that do construction, landscaping, that kind of services, and I feel like that is the true meaning of this area. You have a house in the front, parking in the back. I always told my wife if we were ever to sell the house, what I imagined a person buying it would be that. It'd be a guy that's not able to park his commercial vehicle in Danvers in any of the parking lots, and he's looking for a place to run a business and have his commercial parking out back. After those companies, Mantor sold the property right across the street from me, which was a vacant lot. Mantor owned all this property along here across from me, and they put up Big Pond paving. So that was, once again, a construction type company who's been very good to us. They've respected hours of operation. They try to be as quiet as they can when they need to go out early for paving jobs. But they've been very good about it. So after that, we've developed DeLuigi's Foods, which was once DeLuigi's Sausage down on the far end, purchased Bart's Marina next to it, which used to sell boats, and their operation has increased probably tenfold. It used to be a small mom and pop sausage factory that went out to, small stores right around the area. They now have tractor trailer units that are actually physically parking on Pope's Lane all hours of the night between Sunday night, Monday morning, and Tuesday, waiting to make their deliveries at DeLuigi's. I've included a couple pictures. I believe they got sent to the board. This is where I think my police officer background and safety of the road, this road cannot handle this. It's already at a maximum, if not overloaded. We've had the resident of number 8 Holt's Lane came out this road, and a semi-truck came down this road, and he actually sideswiped him and didn't even know he hit him. He did a police report, and he had a sideswipe accident on this ramp. My wife has been run off the road twice where they beep at her. When she comes up this ramp, they come off this highway, they come down this ramp, and they'll physically actually come so close to her that she has to stop, and they beep at her and tell her to back up, because they can't back up. So I talked to the residents down here on this cul-de-sac, and this whole area, making it sound like they can make this turn easily is not as easily an option as possible. I know the attorney stated that that would come later on in the site planning, and that really has nothing to do with this meeting, but I just wanted to make a point of that at this time. Want to talk a moment about the environmental concerns of the tree loss behind us. This is all forest currently. It's a hilly terrain with forest, with trees. It has hawks. I've had deer in here, and all of the other animals that are living up there. It also provides shade and comfort for the folks up at, ironically enough, Shady Oak Trailer Park, which will no longer be Shady Oak, so they'll probably have to change the name of that. Looking in town, I found that a facility of this size you would find over like in Electronics Ave on the other side that is committed to this size building. There's no residences over there in Electronics Ave. That's more of a type facility for this kind of building. But I just want to thank the board for listening to me today. I know a lot of this will go in front of the planning board, and it really doesn't pertain today, but I just want to appreciate letting me talk. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Waterman, just to clarify a couple of things, you brought up the zoning. The highway corridor zone, if I am correct, I believe was created less than 10 years ago. So that is a change from when you purchased, and clearly back to the 50s when this was probably more residential or more of the type businesses you explained to us, which are the smaller construction or contractor type yards. And so that is now highway corridor zone is a new zone in the town of Danvers. And as far as the trees, and again, that's, I'm not speaking for the board, if this were to pass tonight, you know, the planning board is your avenue to try to shape that if it does go forward, and what that landscaping would look like and what you are gonna see if it passes.
All
So,
right, thank you.
anyone else here from the public that'd like to speak on 13 Pope's Lane? Yep, back there on the right.
Couple of questions and a couple of remarks and a question.
Identify yourself.
Who are you?
I'm sorry, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1.
Thank you, Mr. Bradstreet.
Thank you. The length of the trailer, it was described as an SU-40. The length wasn't given for this tractor.
That's a good point. Can you guys respond to that? Because I was wondering myself what that is. I did hear 50-foot trailer, but I didn't know what the other one was.
Of course, an SU-40 would be considered your typical size box truck, without an articulating cab and a bed.
And the length of that?
Length of those vary anywhere, depending on how big the cab is or the engine is, anywhere between, 35 up to, it could be 50 feet, in total overall length.
35 to 50?
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Bradstreet, more questions?
Well, at this point, 35 to 50. I've been around long enough to remember when that was all residential. I understand the residents are located where they are because that's where the houses are. The one business that went in that I'm familiar with was allowed at a different time. He's the only one that, or the property owner was in favor of this. The residents are not in favor of this. My feeling is that in spite of it being designated highway corridor that came after the residents, I would be more in deference to the residents than the business. Businesses come and go. I'd like to think that the homeowners are gonna be there longer than the businesses, and it'd be nice if they're allowed their place in the sun more than the business. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Any additional comments from the public? Yes, Mr. Duggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matthew Duggan, 41 Chase Street. I was wondering if we might be able to flush out the reason why the residents are concerned about this project. We heard Mr. Waterman, and I'm glad that some residents did make it a point to come here tonight to speak on this. I heard the clerk say that there was a concern mostly about the construction phase, but that's really just a finite period of time. It's what happens after that. And I thought I heard earlier in the presentation from the applicant that it talked about light manufacturing, and then suddenly I heard that no, won't be any manufacturing. So that would have an impact on the residents in terms of noise and odors. So could the clerk kind of expand a little bit on what the letters, what kind of, not paraphrase, but just kind of explain what the residents' primary concerns were other than the construction phase?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly give some detail.
Well, you heard Mr. Waterman's.
Yeah, that was quite eloquent,
Basically
and
is-
I'm sure that that is...
That was basically his whole letter.
Right, okay.
So you heard his. 10 Pope's Lane, they're not gonna be around for the meeting. They strongly express their concerns about being allowed to move forward in our neighborhood. The additional construction vehicle traffic, 18-wheel vehicles moving through and turning at the corner of our street, as well as businesses on the road, busyness on the road. This would makes me extremely fearful of our safety and the safety of my toddler and the other young children on our street. So basically, it's the same.
It's more,
I understand.
more concerns. And you're right, I agree with you. I do believe the construction phase of anything of this nature is a finite period of time. I would imagine, and again, I think Attorney McCann hasn't really given us exactly what is going to go in here, but that's, I guess we can't really beat it out of her, so.
So did I hear that there was going to be a request for a use variance?
Well, the use, she explained that, though. She explained what the use variance was for.
Yeah.
It's because this is not allowed in the highway corridor zone.
I know
Do
that.
I have
so-
that correct?
Industrial
Right. Industrial warehouse.
is not permitted in this.
Okay. I see you, Mr. Bradstreet, hold on.
Yep, so I know that some of the board members are not in favor of use variances, it just in the,
Yes.
the fact that they're not really allowed in Massachusetts. So what's this industrial warehouse, so,
Well, I think it's, I mean, Attorney
is that-
Attorney McCann can respond, but I think by the Town of Danvers zoning bylaws, it's kind of a broad brush. It's pretty undefined, and I don't know if that's by design or if it's that way in other towns. I can only speak to Danvers and what our bylaws say.
and that should be a concern for the board, right? That
Sure.
it's kind of offering an open-ended
More definition that's
use.
in these bylaws, it makes our job easier. But when they're vague like this, that's why we're here. We're here to make a determination.
Right. Well, I think that if you look long-term, right, to the impact of the residential homes, even though their kind of non-conforming use, the fact that their families that are living there, that should carry some weight.
Sure.
Especially when you think about the impact on their quality of life. So, I'm not sure, these homes, this type of growth, and Mr. Waterman alluded to that, he showed that the progression over time, the industrial use has creeped down the street, you know,
Yeah.
and it seems just like a matter of time that those homes will be gone, which is, you know, it's a shame because it's a nice little enclave for families. I would just try to nail it down for what the use could be down the road. It doesn't need to be open-ended. You know, we could see light manufacturing, you know, like machine shop type use where, you know, there's noise throughout the day, like odors, that kind of thing. That's really not, I think, appropriate. It's not something that the residents bought into when they moved there and they made those purchases. So that's all I have for the moment.
Thank you. Sure.
We're not here proposing light manufacturing. We're requesting a use variance to allow industrial warehousing, which under the bylaw is defined as a building used for storage of goods and materials. That's why we're here. And that's what we're requesting. And use variances are permitted in Massachusetts, and they are permitted in the town of Danvers. So we're not asking for anything
No,
that's
I
not
do agree
permitted.
with Mr. Duggan, though. I thought I heard light manufacturing too at the beginning of your
Those are
presentation.
types of uses that are permitted in the highway corridor zone.
Okay, but you're not asking
We
for
are-
that.
We are here for industrial warehousing,
Got it.
which for one reason or another isn't included because of the way the chart was set up.
Yep.
And again, I don't think intentionally, and planning staff didn't have a good answer for why that happened. But as bylaws get codified and changed from narrative form to chart form, which is what happened in Danvers a number of years ago, this happened. But remember, self-storage / warehousing is permitted here. We're trying to make it more clear that we're looking for industrial warehousing, and that's the only thing that's before the board tonight. And again, this building itself is fully conforming.
Thank you. Additional public comment. Just let me check. Ms. Bradstreet, looks like you're the last one, and then I'm going to close it. Oh, you have one? Okay. Would you like to go? Go ahead, and then Bill, I'll get you at the end. And I'll get you as well.
Hi, my name is Deborah Hutchins, and I live at the mobile home park.
Hi, Deborah.
I'm retired, and it doesn't matter what time the trucks come in and out. When they start building that, it's gonna be all day long hearing that noise, the trees being chopped down. We have enough businesses there already that start early, like 6 o'clock. And I'm a light sleeper. I hear everything that goes on. It drives me crazy. The traffic, she's right about Pope's Lane, is a very narrow road. I walk my dog down there, and there are plenty of times where I've had to jump out of the way because cars come zooming down that street, and I've had to almost go into the woods with my dog. And the traffic is just, it's just not gonna be, and like I said, with the noise, where that park is now, there's the highways where motorcycles go by, and I mean, it's those big, Suzuki things that make those really loud noises. People in cars go by with their music blasting so loud that I almost jump out of bed. With the dust coming from that being built, the trees being taken down, we probably want to be able to have our windows open in the fall, which, I love to have the fresh air come in. The dust is just gonna be, it's gonna be a dust bowl around there. I'm not gonna be able to breathe. There's enough noise pollution around there. There's enough air pollution around there because of the Manta, because of Bitcoin, because of Deloigi's. And once they start tearing the trees down and all that, The animals are gonna have nowhere to go. You're gonna end up finding more roadkill. They're gonna starve, they won't be able to find food to eat. That's why the animals are coming out now, and it's the people's fault, because they're taking away where they'll live, their habitat. And it should be a place, if they wanna put it, it should be a place that is already vacant, or like in an industrial park that's already there, like Electronics Avenue, or down by South Side off of Center Street. It's just too much. I think it's just too much. I've lived there since '82. Before it was a mobile home park, there used to be little cabins there. My trailer has been there since, I think, '58, so it's an old trailer. And I have nowhere else to go. That's my home. I've been there since '82. Like I said, the noise right now is enough. Can't take it anymore. You know, I'm retired, I'm older, I don't need that noise. I love the trees, they bring me happiness. I love to hear the birds, I love to see the animals, there's turkeys that come around all the time. It's just, you know, if they want to build something, go somewhere else, you know. I'm sure there's other places besides, like you say, the residential people. We don't need it, you know, we just don't. It's not fair. You know, it's not fair to us. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm Philip Knowles. I own Bitcoin Corp. And I live at 18 Pope's Lane. I don't envy you people tonight because.
Don't worry, nobody ever does.
This driveway coming here, I don't know where the street comes in. I don't know if this is my driveway, but it looks like an accident waiting to happen. And when I see that many parking spaces, that concerns me a little bit. Fortunately, my guys go out early, and they don't show up till later. The only vehicle that might make multiple trips is my low bed, if he's changing equipment, but I think, and I realize that's on the site plan review, Nancy's pointed that out to me, Attorney McCann, excuse me. You know, I gotta be sure to be at that hearing, because if nothing else, Pope's Lane will have to be rebuilt if that building goes in, because of the truck traffic, because it's just, whoever said it's too small, and I think it was the police officer, absolutely right. I come in that loop in the morning, and it's time somebody's going out, and my son almost was able to take over the business, because I thought I was gonna get killed in the car. But I think, I understand as far as the use, I don't have anything against that. It's just, and you kind of really got to know how many vehicles you're going to put in and out of there a day, because that's going to be a factor too. But that's just my feeling at this time, is that the congestion and the size of that street. That street was built as a residence street, and we, including me, have converted it to a commercial street. And it's not a street that I happen to know whether or not it's going to be rebuilt or redesigned or redone, because I also happen to be the paving contractor for the Town of Danvers, and I know it's not on the list. So.
They haven't approached you, I take it.
No, they haven't even thought about it. But I would say that part of this whole thing, if it goes forward, needs to be a rebuilding of Pope's Lane.
Okay, thank you. There in the black shirt. You wanted to speak?
Hi, Chris Drislane, 23 Pope's Lane. Mr. Knowles just stole my thunder. The entrance and exit to this proposed building is a serious accident waiting to happen. Never mind the implications of coming to and from our places of businesses. We can't come we can't come up the southbound side of Pope's Lane because of the DeLuigi tractor trailer brigade, which is always blocking the road, so I have to come around the other side, which is very skinny. I'm not against the person trying to propose this building. I just think if he had Route 1 entrance and exit, it would be a different story. Whole bottom would be a buffer zone. You definitely can't do 2 tractor trailers coming around the northbound side of Pope's Lane. And what's gonna happen is, once the south side of Pope's Lane becomes so congested that we have to use this side is gonna be congested. We're gonna be trapped in and out of our businesses, everyone on that street. So unless Attorney McCann can speak to how that's not gonna happen with such a skinny driveway, I think that's a serious concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you respond to that?
Guess I can respond a couple of ways. Number one, and probably most importantly, is that traffic and curb cuts and radius for curb and turning movements and traffic analysis and traffic study is all part of site plan review. And that will be reviewed and submitted to the planning staff as well as the town engineer. And he will guide, and they will guide the planning board on that during the site plan review process. My other comment is the site layout and the building is conforming to the zoning bylaw under the jurisdiction that you have, what you have to look at. And I think the industrial warehouse use is a less intensive use than other uses permitted in the highway corridor zone. So the traffic and the layout and making sure that widths are proper and that the traffic, truck traffic that's proposed when we get to site plan review would be reviewed by the town and town staff independently from the traffic study that we will provide as part of the requirement for site plan approval.
Yeah, we'll ask this one question. Were other size buildings considered smaller than the 32,000? Because it does seem a little bit large.
Well, it was designed to meet the requirements of the bylaw. And when you do that, you balance parking requirements with the use, with the size of the building. So were other concepts and things looked at? I'm sure they were. I mean, that I'm sure Taylor does that as part of his site planning. But for this layout and this very unusual site, we really didn't outline or highlight the irregular shape of this lot. It's a very unusual lot, and the use that we're proposing allows us to create a building and parking that meet that type of use, where other, as I said at the start of this, other highway corridor type of uses, highway corridor zone uses, wouldn't work on this site because of parking demands and building size demands that are required for different type of highway corridor uses.
Well-
And a comment was made a few minutes ago about industrial uses creeping down the street, I think is the term that was used, as that was somehow not to be expected. Well, this is highway corridor zone, and this is what it's zoned for. So it is to be expected, and that's what site plan approval is for, and we're looking simply for the industrial warehousing component.
Well, let me ask it this way. Is this the maximum size you could put in here? Or could it be bigger? Or is this as big as it can be?
Not being a site designer, I will say that I could think of a way that the building could be bigger, if you put parking under, for example.
Okay.
So is this the biggest that it could be? No, I don't think it's the biggest that it could be.
Okay. I think, Mr. Bradstreet, you had, you're all set, Attorney McCann?
Yes.
Okay. You have one more comment? Something new, I hope?
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I think one of the remarks that I thought I heard was that the tractor-trailer facing the car expected the car to back up. I assume because he felt he was bigger than the car, that that's the way it should happen. However, if the tractor-trailer was driven by a licensed CDL, he knows how to back up, so he can back up. And it shouldn't be the resident in the car that has to make way for the tractor-trailer. Just an observation on my part.
Yep.
I mean, to be fair, they can back up. If they can't, they shouldn't have the license.
I agree with you, but this zoning board does
I
not
understand. I understand. It'll go to the
try to
site
get
plan
involved
review.
with traffic issues and parking and how people drive.
It's just a
Yeah.
comment because of an observation that I made and heard. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at this point. No additional questions here from the board? Okay, we're going to deliberate, and Jeff, we'll start down there with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think this is a really tough case. It's appealing that we're moving towards more conformance, an allowed use instead of a non-conforming use, and a fully conforming building instead of what we have now. But for a finding, we have to decide whether it's going to be more detrimental to what presently exists. And listening to the residents, I guess I'm a no on this, because I can't see how this is anything but more detrimental in terms of traffic.
So she's asked for one or the other, finding or a variance.
Well, I'm definitely no on a finding.
Okay.
I'll wait and see what the other board members say.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Becky?
I agree with Jeff that it's a difficult decision, and I sat here and just looked through what are the alternatives of what could go on that site, and I think it's important for the neighbors to be aware that under the highway corridor zone, it could be a fitness center, it could be a convenience store, it could be a drive-through, a hotel, a kennel with dogs running around. It could be an office building. It could be motor vehicle sales. It could be a retail or a restaurant. It could be light manufacturing. So all of those are allowed uses. If they wanted to do any of those, they wouldn't even have to come here. So I think it's important that the industrial warehousing, although maybe something that everybody doesn't like, it might be a quieter use than what could potentially go in there. And from what I see, it sounds like this property owner is willing to sell their property and let somebody develop it and figure out what they want to put in there. And so they've come back, they've come with this proposal, but the proposal could be something more onerous. With regard to the construction, I think we have to remember that that's a limited time frame, and there are requirements with regard to the construction and what hours it can be. I know it's going to be difficult, but that won't go on forever. With regard to the tractor trailers obstructing the road, that's not really part of this application, and I think if tractor trailers are obstructing your road, you need to call the police. You need to get them out of there. They can't be parked in the middle of the road. And that's a police issue. That doesn't have anything to do with this property. All that being said, I agree with Jeff in that I don't see how this can be a finding. I don't see how it can be substantially less detrimental than a residential property. However, I think that it's so close to what is allowed and so much less
Yeah, onerous.
onerous than what could go in there, that I would favor the variance. I would also favor a smaller building if possible. So, but I would approve it because it fits on this site, the way it's proposed.
And you're a no on the finding or a yes?
No on a finding, yes.
Yes on the
Yeah,
variance.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I agree with Becky on the variance.
Okay,
A lot of other really nastier
sure.
things could go in there by right, and they wouldn't even come here.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Ken?
I'm a little on the fence on this. It's obviously a very interesting situation where we have residential next to, in the highway corridor. I don't think Pope's Lane is made for more trucking. So I guess I would be the same, no on the finding, yes on the variance.
And well, no, I won't put that out there. I asked for the restriction, but no one else has. So you're a yes and a no. Ken, thank you. Ken?
There's a myriad of different issues with this. Knocking down the trees and stuff would be detrimental to Shady Oaks and the residences. I think, yeah, get a lot of animals in there. The street's very thin. Just driving down, I noticed that it was thin for a car. I mean, it's fine for a car, but big trucks and stuff is, I don't think that works all too well. And the residences, they've been there since the 50s. And I don't know what well, they changed the zoning, but I think this, in the spirit of the industrial / residential area in the day was like Mr. Waterman had described. It seems like it would be more conducive to have like a small contractor or someone just to like go in and out a little bit during the day and have a small, garage and park their trucks and stuff. That seems what it should be. I'm no on both, just because I like to push back, and maybe someone will reconsider even doing anything big in here. I'd hate to say yes for something that I really don't want anything really big to go there at all. I don't want them to knock down the trees, and I don't want the residents, the neighbors, to deal with any more there. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm no on both.
Very good.
Yep.
Corinne?
I agree with Ken. I am no on both. I think with the proposal is much more detrimental to the neighborhood than the residential nature of the home as it stands now. I also disagree with Becky. I agree that some of the other businesses or entities that could go in there, they might have more people driving down the street, but they're not big tractor trailers. They're not going to be there driving in and out at 11 o'clock at night and starting at 6 in the morning. So I just think it's much too detrimental, and maybe if they propose a smaller building, maybe if it were cited differently, I don't know. I just think that it's too big. I don't agree with 11 to 6, and I just think it's too detrimental to that neighborhood.
Thank you, Corinne. Yeah, this is a real difficult neighborhood in general, where we do have existing, industrial type use, highway type use, and residents. This is one of those neighborhoods when when anything comes before us, it's very difficult. I feel like, to Mr. Waterman's point, he has some industrial neighbors who are good neighbors and sound like they do the right thing to try to stay that way. But you have infrastructure problems there as far as the road itself and how it both enters from Route 1 and exits back onto Route 1. I think enforcement issues are also something this board can't control, but that's something as neighbors, if the sausage place is parking their trucks on the road, I mean, Mr. Waterman, by all means, go down and ticket them. Or you have your brothers in arms that handle that. But with that said, I'm also a no on both. I just don't see how, and I may be more conducive to something a little smaller and maybe less in scope than this, but I just can't see, at this point, I feel like it's piling on that neighborhood, and it's a real erosion of a neighborhood, and I don't think I could, with a clear conscience, vote for it as presented. That doesn't mean I wouldn't adjust my vote, but at this point, I'm a no. So the finding is, you know, clearly doesn't pass, and you don't have the votes on the variance, so what would you?
with him.
Yeah. I wasn't looking.
Yes, obviously.
Mr. Chairman, at the conclusion of this vote, can we take a break?
I'm sorry.
Can we take a break after
Yes,
this?
yes. Hi.
Hello.
So what would you like to do?
I would like to continue to give the applicant an opportunity to digest the comments that he's heard.
Okay.
And I would like to continue for 4 weeks.
September 12th.
No, the one after
next
that.
one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
26th.
You mean summer's over? I
25th.
kind of forgot.
September 26th.
September 26th. You'd like to continue this to September 26th.
Please.
And obviously, any updates or changes in your plan, we would need the week prior. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
And seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and any of the neighbors, obviously, feel free to attend that next meeting, which will be September 26th.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess at this point, and we'll come back. Thank you. We're going to go on to our next case. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next case is 12 Prospect Street, zoned R2. Request for a finding from section 3.11.1 of the Danvers Zoning Bylaw to allow the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling by adding a two-story addition with a new side setback of 8.9 feet where 9'2" exists and 15 is required. Request is made by Cal DeLisi, docket 22-4991.
And that was modified, you know.
Yes, we had a new drawing on it.
She actually.
Good evening.
had that
Good
in
evening.
there.
For the record, your name and address.
My name is Cal DeLisi, 12 Prospect Street.
Tell us what you'd like to do.
So, as you just stated, requesting a finding for, I have a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling, and just looking to add a garage and a second story above it.
Yep. And I see you sent in an updated drawing we got today.
Yes.
That
Thanks, George.
included the overhang, so the update now, it looks like your closest side setback's gonna be 7.5 feet?
Yes.
Okay, at its closest point.
Yes, it's closest.
And 26 in the back, 30, okay, so I see the changes. Anything else you wanna add?
I guess not really, other than just have a growing family, and this is primarily why I'm doing it. Other than that,
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to the board and we'll ask you some questions.
all right.
Kareen, we'll start down there with you.
The home renovation plan or drawing that you have, is this what it's gonna end up looking like?
Yes,
It's lovely.
thank you.
And I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Thank you, Kareen. Ken?
I have no questions.
Thank you, and Ken,
No questions, thank you.
Becky,
No questions.
and Jeff.
No questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I think the only question I have is, so it looks like a real modest house. What's the approximate square footage currently, and what are you going to?
So it's 1,600 square feet without the basement.
Yep.
And I'm going to about 2,100-ish.
Okay, so yeah, it's about a 500 square foot addition,
Right.
and it's second floor across the top, and then the garage itself is moving over 8 feet? Is that what I?
So I have,
There's a breezeway.
so this is the existing garage here. It's
Yep.
about 10 by 20, and then there's a connector, but it doesn't really connect to the
Okay,
garage.
yeah.
It's terrible, but, basically, I'm improving the back setback because I'm now making the garage flush with the back of the house.
Gotcha.
And basically, if you take it and you just stretch it, that's all I'm doing.
Okay.
Including
And
the
add in the second
dormer.
floor
Yeah, exactly.
with dormers and things, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I have no further questions. Anybody from the public here would like to speak on 12 Prospect Street? Hearing none, I will come back to the board. Kareen?
I will vote for this.
Thank you. And Ken?
I'll vote for this too.
Ken?
I'll vote for this.
Becky?
I went out and visited your house, and I will vote for this. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
And Jeff?
I will vote for this.
I too did a site visit, and it looks like you do a nice job to keep up what's there, and I think this will be a nice improvement. And anyone who has to live that close to 128 should be able to enjoy their spot, so.
Thank you.
I too will vote for this, so could I get a motion, please?
I move to issue the finding in accordance with section 3.11.1 of the Danvers Zoning Bylaw to allow the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling by adding a two-story addition as shown on the plans provided by the applicant, as it is appropriate in scale and massing for the neighborhood and will not be substantially more detrimental than what presently exists. The address is 12 Prospect Street.
I will second that.
And just before we vote on this, Georgia, we have the updated drawing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we need to address in the motion that it's 7.5 feet?
No, because we have it on the plans. I made it a bit more confusing by adding the measurements because it's technically a finding, so we don't need to reference the the setback
original
measurement.
one. Okay.
But it will be on the plan.
As shown on the plans.
Exactly.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck with your addition. Okay, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next case is 48 Crane Brook Drive, Highway Corridor Zone. Request for a use variance from Table 1 of the Danvers Zoning Bylaw to allow the use of an existing property to change from extended stay hotel to multifamily rental apartment. Request for a dimensional variance from Section 10 of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow a reduction in the number of required parking spaces for the proposed multifamily use. Request is made by PEG Boston Danvers Property LLC, docket 22-4992.
Attorney McCann, this address does not come up on Waze properly. I don't know how you fixed that one, but
Well, I can't fix Waze.
No.
But I do think
just
it
thought
is-
I'd share that with
You
you.
know, I didn't know there was a Crane Brook Drive until I looked at the assessor's records and found out that there is one.
Okay,
thank
well,
you.
tell us what you'd like to do.
My name is Nancy McCann. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, PEG Boston Property LLC. With me tonight is Jeff Warr from PEG Boston Properties and PEG Companies as Chief Legal Counsel. And we are requesting a use variance as well as a parking variance in order to allow the change in use of the extended stay motel that is currently located at 48 Cranebrook Drive into rental apartments. The property is located in the highway corridor zone, which does permit motel uses, but does not permit residential uses such as what this would be, which is a rental multifamily apartments. The applicant purchased this property in 2018, and the property itself as a residence inn, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, located next to TGI Fridays and Costco, has been operated by Marriott as a residence inn for many, many years. It was constructed in the late 1980s. It went through site plan approval at that time, and it was constructed and has operated as an extended stay motel, meaning these are really small apartments. They have full kitchen facilities. They have living and sleeping quarters. There are amenities on site that you might find with apartments for folks who are at an extended stay facility. There's a pool, fire pit, basketball court, that sort of thing. Again, all with the approval of the planning board back in the late 1980s. The site consists of 96 units. There are 72 studio units and 24 one-bedroom units. Over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe a little more than that, business travel has started to decline. The extended stay facilities back in the 80s when they started up were really designed for business travelers who were going to be located in an area for an extended period of time, whether that's a few weeks, few months, whatever. And so they were really designed for the business traveler. And business travel has declined. Then we have the pandemic of the last 2 years, and business travel has really declined even more, significantly more. And the pandemic dramatically impacted business travel. So the new business model is really technology over travel. And so the need for extended stay facilities for business travelers has really declined, and the market has changed substantially. So much so that Marriott is exiting the extended stay motel industry. And this property will no longer be operated by Marriott. PEG Companies, PEG is now put in a position of figuring out what to do, and there's really two things. One, convert the property into apartments, or try to find another operator to operate the facility. And when Marriott's been doing a wonderful job, but often when you find a new operator, the site tends to get to a downgraded type of operator. So PEG's goal is to continue to operate this site attractively and well. And while extended stay business travel is no longer a necessary option in the marketplace, providing affordable, attainable housing in the community certainly is necessary. So the proposal that's before you tonight is requesting a use variance in order to convert the 96 extended stay motel units to apartments, remaining the same configuration of 96 units with 72 studios and 24 one-bedrooms. That would not change. There would be no particular change to the site itself. There will be upgrades to the individual units, but no particular site changes. And what this proposal does is addresses a couple of things. It addresses the loss of Marriott as a quality operator of this facility. It addresses what to do with this property with the reduction in the extended stay business. And it also addresses the need to provide attainable housing or workforce housing, as it's sometimes referred, within the community. PEG Industries does this and has operated and does operate a number of different facilities across the country that have been converted from extended stay to apartments. And we have a PowerPoint that we'd like to show you, and Jeff is going to go through that with you on behalf of PEG companies to give you an idea of who PEG is and how these facilities have come to be and how they operate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. As she stated, my name is Jeff War. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for PEG Companies, and I just want to take a couple of minutes and walk you through who PEG is, and then how it is that we came about getting into the extended stay hotel business to where we were then taking some of these older facilities and converting them over to multifamily housing. And I wanted to just clarify one thing that Nancy had said, because I think it'll be important as we go through this. So Marriott is, with a lot of these older residents in properties, they are exiting those, and they are not renewing their licensing on those. They are still using and still building new residence inns, but if you go and look at a brand new residence inn that's built somewhere, it looks very different from the residence inns like this and of the first few generations that they built of those. These are garden style with exterior entrances, look more like a garden style apartment project. Whereas the new residence inns look just the same as any other hotel, with all interior corridors, interior entrances to the rooms or the suite units. And it's just a lot easier to manage those, and from a security standpoint when you're running a hospitality property, as opposed to something like this if you're running a hospitality property. And you can just even imagine the housekeeping if it's raining outside and you're going to all of these different buildings. And so that's what Marriott is doing. They're going away from them. You can do the next slide. I'll tell you quickly about PEG. PEG is a real estate investment firm. We are located in Salt Lake City, particularly in Provo, is where our home offices are, in a suburb of Salt Lake City. We are in the business of handling everything from the real estate investment through the development of properties, then the construction of properties, and then finally the management of properties. We manage our own properties. We focus on two main areas. One area is hospitality properties, hotels. We have almost 40 hotels. Well, in fact, with the recent addition, we have approximately 50 hotels, some of which we are going to go through the conversion process like we're going to talk about tonight. And then we have a large number of multifamily units. As you can see here, we have about 5,000 hotel rooms currently and getting close to 5,000 multifamily units. That's throughout the country, 30 states and Canadian provinces. We have about 1,100 employees throughout the country operating those different businesses for us. Primarily, what we do is we develop from the ground up. So we're usually building brand new hotels, brand new multifamily properties. But a few years ago, we were approached by Marriott, who said, we understand what's happening with these older extended stay hotels. We're not going to relicense them and allow them to be Marriott Residence Inns, and we think that this is a good use for them, to convert them over to Class B housing. And so that's kind of how we got into this. So if you can go to the next slide. This just quickly shows you some of the awards that we've had and the quality work that we do. I mean, we've been Hyatt Developer of the Year. We've had some of Marriott's highest awards for development of our hotels. And so we have a lot of experience in new development and then also in renovation and conversion of these properties. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about how we got, I told you how we got into the conversion business, but a little bit of what we have done. Since 2018, we have purchased a number of these older Residence Inn properties. We've been operating them all as hotels. Now, we primarily manage those properties with our own in-house hospitality management group, but they are licensed by Marriott, and so we manage those pursuant to Marriott requirements and Marriott regulations and standards. But what we have done is we have started taking a number of these Residence Inns, the older ones, and converting them to multifamily housing. At the top, you can see some of those that we have already started and have converted and that are operating as multifamily properties. The lower list are properties similar to this property here in Danvers that we are in some sort of process of going through an entitlement change, allowing us to be able to change those from a hospitality use to a multifamily use. I think one thing that I'll point out on this slide is that it really is addressing what has turned out to be a nationwide housing shortage. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and why these make so much sense to do from a cost standpoint and how that translates into being able to be housing that is more affordable than brand new Class A multifamily housing that's being constructed. So as we mentioned, these old Residence Inns, they were primarily built in the 80s and 90s. They were built as garden-style apartments as opposed to the types of hotels and Residence Inn that Marriott is requiring now in order to carry that Marriott flag or that Marriott name or license. And so they're in areas and usually still really good properties in good shape and have the ability to be able to be transferred over to another use. And so there are lots of cities that we have been talking to and where we've done this, like I showed on the last slide, where the cities and towns are excited for us to come in and to help kind of revitalize this property and a little bit kill two birds with one stone. Not only revitalizing and putting money back into the property, but also solving a housing need that they have in the communities. You can go to the next one. So why extended stay hotels? Nancy had mentioned this. When they were built, they actually are built as apartments. If any of you have ever stayed in a Residence Inn, they're an apartment. Some of them are studios, some of them are one bedrooms, some of them are two bedrooms. They generally have full kitchens. They have all of the amenities that you would find not only at a hotel, but that you would find at a multifamily project, like common areas for entertaining, pools. Many times you may have sports courts, pickleball courts, those types of things. In addition, then there usually is in the hotel industry what we refer to as the gatehouse, which is the building where you go in to check in these types of garden-style Residence Inns. And those are converted over then nicely over to clubhouses for the multifamily use. Usually they're located in great areas near shopping, restaurants, and they work very well for multifamily for that reason. In addressing kind of the attainable housing issues, developers just aren't able to build Class B housing. With construction costs the way that they are, with the cost of property the way that it is in every market throughout the country, developers are only able to come in and build what we refer to as Class A housing and multifamily housing. And what's the difference between Class A and Class B and other classes? Class A is usually the newest stuff that's been developed within the last few years, usually has the higher end finishes, usually has those amenities that may not be at multifamily projects or complexes that are a little less expensive. And so they usually are kind of the top of the multifamily tier, and usually then as a result of that garner the highest rent. Class B, you just can't go in anymore and build because you've got to have such high rents in order to be able to justify that construction. And so like I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's essentially what we're coming in and doing in many of these communities and converting it over to Class B housing. Because of the acquisition prices that are usually less and discounted, and then because of the abilities that we have, and we've done it so many times, we can usually provide Class B multifamily housing in different markets across the nation at well below what replacement cost would be for a brand new multifamily complex. Okay, next slide. Okay, let me just show you kind of some of our recent conversions so you can get an idea of what it is that we go in and do. So this is a very similar property to the property here in Danvers. It's located in Buffalo, New York, that's been converted in the last 24 months. You can see at the top some of the pre-renovation. There's a lot of red that was going on in there at the time. And you can see at the bottom some of the post-renovation pictures that we've done. But you can see that they've got full kitchens, that they really look like an apartment that you would walk into. You can go to the next one. This one is in Florida, right adjacent to Walt Disney World. We have a lot of people who live in this one that work at the park or that work for Disney. And again, you can see in the middle there some of the post-renovation pictures, but these are pretty much what these types of apartments look like. Go ahead. Another one in Austin, Texas, that just gives you an idea of what they look at. Notice one thing that you can see a little better in this is the type of flooring that's used, the types of countertops that were used, and I'll tell you a little more what we would plan on doing with that property here in Danvers. Another one in Overland Park, Kansas. You can see the pre-renovation at the top and then the post-renovation and what those end up looking like. So we'll talk a little bit about the property that we have here, and Nancy went through and explained, 72 studios, 24 one-bedroom apartments. This just shows you an aerial view of the property and kind of what it looks like. And so you can see it's a number of different buildings. Generally what you have is 8 units, usually in each building. Up at the top, let's see, I think that is the gatehouse, which would become a clubhouse. You can see it's adjacent to a pool, and then off to the side of that, there's a sports court. And so that gives you a little bit of the visual. We wouldn't make changes to the exterior. There's no new construction that's going on here as far as the footprints of the buildings. Okay, you can go to the next one. This just shows you an example of what these floor plans look like in these Marriott Residence Inns. The top shows you what a studio apartment looks like. Usually they're approximately 500 square feet, so they're not big, but there also is a big tendency and a big push for doing micro units in many of the markets now. They're larger than what they are, what we would refer to as micro units, which many times are more 250 to 300 square feet. And then at the bottom, then that shows a one bedroom. You're fine. You can go ahead. So let me tell you kind of what our planned renovations are for here. What we would do is we generally at the exterior would go out and we just freshen up the site with paint, repair anything that needs to be repaired, whether that is concrete that's cracked or is chipped away, landscaping that needs to be fixed, resurfacing, parking lots, pools, sports courts, if those need to be done. Just going through and generally upgrading those things, repairing fencing and lighting. And then to the gatehouse, which would then become the clubhouse, then what we're doing is we are adding things like bike storage for the residents. We usually upgrade and increase the size of the fitness center. We will add resident storage so that they have some places to do that. In a lot of our properties, we've repurposed the sports court into a dog park because there's been such a demand for that. Mail and package delivery room, and then, like I said, upgrades to the pool and spa area. And then generally in the inside, and it depends from property to property, depending on what the condition is, we will add stainless steel appliances, usually new flooring, going with vinyl, luxury vinyl plank flooring. We will either paint or many times put in new kitchen cabinets. We almost always upgrade the countertops to solid surface to generally a granite, repaint, update the lighting, and then in many of the units, depending on the configuration, we may add a small stackable washer and dryer. And then as far as the property as a whole, then we'll usually take the existing laundry facilities and increase the size of those for those units that won't have an in-house washer and dryer. Okay. So here's what we're finding are the benefits of this. After having done this a number of times, getting lots of feedback from the towns and cities and municipalities that we deal with and have dealt with in the past, we have found that by being able to take these properties and do this conversion, then it minimizes the risk of the property going vacant. Nancy had mentioned that sometimes what happens to these is generally once a extended stay hotel hits a certain point, then it has a really interesting life cycle. And the fact that it's an extended stay hotel is even a little different and sometimes more dramatic life cycle than a regular hotel, from the standpoint that once Marriott or Hyatt or Hilton come in and say, okay, they're past what we want and we're not going to relicense these, then they get what we call down flagged. And so they will go down to either a mom and pop type shop, or there are other lesser brands that are out there. But as a result of that, then the property then usually rents for cheaper for your daily rates. And then many times you get a less desirable clientele in there that's more difficult to be able to keep the property at the level that you want. And so Nancy's going to talk a little more about that in a minute, but that's one of the things that it prevents. You get an infusion of private investment, refresh of the landscaping. In this particular one, access is only from non-residential streets. This is in kind of a neat location for that. It's close to shopping and many of the amenities and things that would be convenient for its residents. It provides additional housing solutions for middle-income earners. And this is the key thing and kind of what we started talking to, and Nancy will touch a little more on that. It replaces temporary hotel guests with long-term residents. It's treated now all of a sudden as a true multifamily property. We only rent minimum of 1-year leases. We don't rent it by the day or by the week or by the night like an extended hotel will do. And as an extended stay hotel gets older, it gets much more interesting when they rent those by the day and the week and the month. Because what you will find is you will find that you will have individuals that aren't able to pass a background and credit check, then going in and utilizing an older extended stay hotel as their home. Now, that is just evidence of the problem that we have in our country with some of this housing. But this isn't a problem that we want to have happen at this particular property, and so this gives us much more control over who those residents are. Okay. Finally, who rents one of our apartments? It's usually households earning between 60 and 120% of the area median income. It's many times blue collar. It is civil servants. We have school teachers and other civil servants that are living there, and then many times also younger white collar workers that are earlier in their career. They don't want a roommate. They want their own place, and this allows them to afford that. Generally younger, the early 30s, mostly single, but maybe if they have a 2-bedroom, sometimes we'll find that they'll have a roommate. They rent here because we provide a better apartment finishes as a result of the upgrades that we do, and amenity packages for the dollar. And then rents that are priced to accommodate a working class budget as a result of that. I think is that the last one? Yeah. So that just gives you a little bit in a nutshell as to who PEG is, what we do, and how we take these these aging extended stay hotels, primarily Marriott residence inns, and convert them over to multifamily housing, kind of the process for doing that, what they end up looking like, what they're done, and who ends up living in those once they're done. So I'll turn it back over to Nancy, and then of course we're available for questions.
Thank you.
All right. Jeff touched on the benefits to the community of this type of a change, and Jeff probably isn't familiar with this, but I think all of us are. We have a couple of properties that we can think of in Danvers where the issues that Jeff alluded to when properties are down-flagged or when they become older and not renovated and that sort of thing. We've got a couple of properties of that kind. One I can think of over on Endicott Street that was near the Denny's, and that fell into disrepair, and I think it's still a pretty dilapidated site. The other is on Newbury Street, very close to this particular property, and it's one that I see written up very often in the newspaper, and I did a little check on police logs and things, and it 261 police calls to that particular facility in the last year. That's the kind of thing we don't want to have happen here, and we want to take this opportunity to repurpose this property. It is a motel. It is there. The facilities on the exterior are not going to change, but this gives us an opportunity to continue this to be a quality run property that meets the needs of the community and the changing need. It's no longer a need of the business traveler who's coming for a month to the area. It's the need for workforce housing, which is defined as those making between 60 and 120 of the area median income. So that brings me to the affordable housing component. With this change of use, changing this to what is called residential uses under the zoning bylaw, we do have to meet the affordable housing requirement under the zoning bylaw, and that would mean 12 units would need to be affordable for those making 80% of the area median income. What the applicant has offered to do here is to have those 12 units being affordable for those making 50% of the area median income, which is a huge difference. That can amount to a difference of about $600 a month in rent. And that is a market and an area of the community that is very underserved here. Because typically, for those who have to provide affordable housing, developers who have to provide affordable housing, it's 80% of the area median income for those who would qualify. In this case, it would be 50% of the area median income, and I can tell you that is, having worked with the Affordable Housing Trust, that is a population that is definitely underserved. This is an excellent location. There's employment opportunities. It is on the commuter route for sure, and their services, restaurants and retail, very close by, obviously, to this site. With the one-bedroom and studio units, there's no impact on the school system. These are going to be generally one person occupied, or maybe a couple. We did provide, because we are asking for a parking relief, and that was a determination by the zoning administrator. I know that you don't typically get into parking, but he made a determination that this project with the change of use would require a parking variance, and we provided you with a parking study prepared by Nelson Nygaard for PEG companies. Nelson Nygaard is actually the traffic consultant that the town uses for the town's own traffic reports. And it did reference in the Nelson Nygaard study that we provided to you for this site, it did reference some of the work that was done by Nelson Nygaard for the town. This property has 96 units. It has 98 parking spaces. Under the Danvers zoning bylaw, a one-bedroom, a studio, or a two-bedroom unit all need 2 parking spaces each. Under the character-based zoning in town that has been recently adopted in the downtown area, the information that the town's traffic consultants was taken to heart, and the parking requirements in these newer zoning districts are much less for studios and one-bedrooms. So in the downtown area, studio and one-bedroom units require only 1 parking space. But we are in one of the districts that does not apply, so the requirement under the code is 2 parking spaces per unit. We don't have that. We have 96 existing units. We have 98 parking spaces. But if you look at the Nelson Nygaard study, under the character-based zoning district, we actually have a few more parking spaces than needed, because we would need 1 parking space per unit under the new character-based zoning. Also, more importantly, perhaps, is actual collected data from very similarly situated project that PEG has that is quite similar to this particular development. And based on that collected data, we would need 90 parking spaces on the weekend and 91 parking spaces peak time during the week. And we have 98 parking spaces. So we do believe that we have sufficient parking for this particular use based on Nelson Nygaard's study and analysis, and also based on what the town is now adopting for other more newer zoning districts. There are ways also to manage and enforce the parking when you have a property like this, which is a rental apartment. It was outlined in the Nelson Nygaard study as well, but the management can be done in a number of ways. The parking spaces can be an option that a renter could elect to rent a parking space. Rather than having it just included in the rent, you get a parking space whether you need it or not. You can include that as an option in your rent if you have a car. And so that's one option, so that those who don't have cars and don't need a parking space really aren't subsidizing the parking spaces that they don't use. So that's one option, is having the parking spaces be allocated in the lease by a parking pass. So if you are leasing a unit, you can lease 1 parking space, and there are parking passes, and that's monitored. And that would be part of the operation of the facility, is to make sure that is monitored. So that is provided. Again, the full study is provided. I know you don't normally get into the parking aspects of a case, but again, the zoning administrator indicated that a parking variance would be needed in this case. We think that this is an excellent conversion, use, an appropriate use of this existing site. It provides some needed benefits to the town. going forward, long-term, as well as some needed housing right now. So as I've indicated in the application, this being a variance, we have the shape of this lot, we have soil conditions of this lot which render a good portion of the site wet. The easterly half of this site is wetland, so we do not have the ability to increase the number of parking spaces. You can see that on the plan, the wetland line is provided there. We have existing buildings on the site, and we are proposing to utilize those existing buildings. Together with the decrease in the market for transient housing needs and the increase in need for attainable workforce housing, all make this as an appropriate use and meeting the hardship for the variances requested. The change of use necessitating this requested variance is not really a change of use. It's a change of the demographic of those who are living there. I could go to the Residence Inn front desk right now and ask to rent a unit for a year. I suspect they would let me. I mean, it's a residential type of use. So it's really not a change of use at all, but rather a change of the use of those, a change of the demographic of those who are living there and the length of time that one would occupy the apartment. The apartments are there. They've been designed as apartments. They've been used as apartments for over 30 years. And they would continue to be used as an apartment. And the requested relief will allow the continued good quality occupancy of the property and good quality operator of the property as well. So we would appreciate your favorable support of this application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney McCann. I have a couple before I turn it over. Peg, I noticed their list. Well, actually, let me start at the top here. So even though this is a use change, this won't go before a site review because you're not changing anything exterior?
No, it is a change of use, and the zoning administrator has said that it will go to site plan review.
Okay, that's right, okay. But I guess the vision there is there's not a lot that's gonna change unless they stall on the parking. I guess I'm a little torn between who's got the jurisdiction here on the parking, us as the zoning board or site plan?
Well, the zoning administrator made the determination that the zoning board should grant the relief for parking in this particular case. That is a change in what the interpretation has always been.
Yes.
Director Fields made that interpretation when he was here. Typically, we go to the planning board for that. We will be going to the planning board for site plan approval, so they'll be looking at that as well.
Well, I guess the confusion for me is if this board were to pass this, and we pass this with the amount of parking spots, and then planning says no to it, then where are you at that point? I guess I'm trying to play this out.
Yeah, the zoning administrator has said it's your jurisdiction on this, and he is the interpreter of the zoning bylaw.
Okay, and I saw on the list that, on the PEG slideshow, there was 2 properties, one in Boston, one in Westboro. Are those properties have already gone through this conversion or have not?
Those are properties that are currently in the same process as this. And I think actually probably the one that's listed as Boston, I believe, is probably
Danvers.
this property.
Is this one?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay,
But there is an additional one in Westboro.
yes. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to the board. Jeff, we'll start down there with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your presentation for PEG, you said that the median incomes were like in the 60 to 120% range of the median household income. And I don't know how much you know about Massachusetts 40B, but we have this affordable housing component. It's a great advantage to the town that you're offering apartments at a reduced rate, but would there be any possibility of offering more at the 80% rate to help us out? since that's kind of your demographic anyway.
Yeah, we looked at that. As Jeff had indicated, it's typically workforce housing, so it's between 60 and 120. We looked at whether there could be more units at the 80% AMI, which is the required
Yes.
AMI under the bylaw, and what seemed to be a better benefit to the town and what worked financially for PEG is to actually offer the 12.5%, 12 units, at a lower AMI, at 50% AMI. I asked the Affordable Housing Trust to weigh in on this project, and they have not met this summer. So I do have did submit a letter to them, and I've been working with planning staff on this for almost a year and a half. So I did not get an official read from them. However, having been before them many times, I know there are a few vocal members of the Affordable Housing Trust who don't feel 80%
Is
AMI
affordable,
rent
yeah.
is affordable.
Yeah.
So I think the 50%, it will be very well received, and I know is certainly very needed.
Yeah, I mean, one point of this board is to try to get as much affordable, countable units as possible, so,
Right.
you know, that, okay. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky?
My notes. I drove through the property. I like the way it's maintained, looks nice. My issue is gonna be parking, and, you know, this always comes up with me. I see the hotel transition to permanent housing a little different, because I think that when somebody comes and rents a hotel room, they're usually in a rental car or whatever, or on vacation, and they have one car. When you get into a one-bedroom apartment where somebody's gonna be there permanently, it's often a couple, two people, and two cars. So to your argument with regard to the parking, I see it a little different from that perspective, and also the parking difference for downtown versus that location, because downtown has municipal parking, so if they say you only need one parking space, there's lots of other places downtown that people could park. So I'm gonna ask of you, how can we get more parking? That's my
Yeah.
dilemma.
That's the problem with this site. If you
Right.
look at the site plan, the wetlands are right there. And this was built, understanding where the wetland line is. Since this was built, the Danvers wetland bylaw has been enacted, which wasn't in place then, and the no-touch, no disturb, no build zones have come into effect. And we did look at whether there was an area to expand parking, and there was not. And we did, that was the first thing we looked at, because of course, this is significant. However, what we then had to look at was, how do we monitor this? How do we protect against a parking problem? And you can do that here with a lease. If you have somebody who says, I need 2 parking spaces, well, you're not going to be renting here because you don't have that. And also, the flip side of that is you have if you separate the parking option from the lease, somebody who doesn't need a parking space, if there are people like that, and there certainly may be. You have Uber, you have Zipcars, you've got folks who are in the 50% AMI maybe don't have a car. That's very real.
I see this as a unique location in that there are a lot of condo complexes in downtown Danvers where they only have 1 parking space, but they have street parking available to them.
Right.
Or they have municipal parking available to them. So this is like, are they gonna end up in the Costco parking lot? Are they gonna end up in the Fridays parking lot?
Right.
You know, there's like nowhere to go. We're like, it's trapped into this little you know, highway area. And so,
Well-
as always, I mean, I'm giving you my discussion and rather than questions at this point, but I'm explaining to you that I just feel there are reasons why I would want to see more parking.
Peg did approach Costco
Okay?
to see if there could be parking obtained from Costco, and that was not a possibility. But they did look into that.
Because there was, at one point, some additional parking available before they built the gas station. And they,
Oh, I think if you
Costco.
drive around there in the back,
well, I think
From a
that
practical
somebody
standpoint, there
rented
probably is.
some space or
Yeah.
something, I am not quite sure how, but I remember something that was going on before they built the gas station. So.
which is in kind of the other side of the Costco. This is very much in the back.
Right.
And does it look like it, you know, maybe they have some spaces there,
Yeah.
but that was not a starter for them. And I
Yeah.
don't know if Jeff knows any more about it than I do, but it was, they.
That's my question.
Peg did
How
try.
can you get more parking?
Well, given
So-
the wetland line.
Yeah.
And the 100-foot buffer is probably right about here. So we really can't. The answer is we can't. We've got 96 units here, whether it's a motel, and it's been operating as a motel for 30-plus years with 96 units. We have a traffic study done and a parking study done by a very reputable
Yeah.
company, and they are saying, based on percentage of occupancy for a facility like this, and one space per unit if necessary, some won't use it, we have enough parking spaces. Do we have a bunch of extra spaces? No. Are folks going to be able to host Thanksgiving dinner? They probably can't, given the size of the unit, but no, they can't. They can't. And that's part of the trade-off for lower rents and
Yeah.
the location, and that's what we can do.
I just say, my personal knowledge of one-bedroom units is that often they have two cars.
That's why they have permitting. You can have parking permits and enforcement.
Yeah. I'm asking you to be creative.
I have been as creative as I can be
Because I
on
like
this.
the concept.
Yeah,
I
the-
like
yeah,
the concept.
yeah.
I'm asking you to be creative.
More questions?
I'm done.
Okay, Ken?
Thank you. Well, I was going to ask, since we're harping on parking, since this is our baby now, what happens when these people have visitors? You have nowhere for visitors to park. You're on the highway.
Right.
Then what? Arguments over where to park?
They're going
You're
to
in my
have,
spot.
they're going to have to visit at TGI Fridays.
You see what I'm saying
Or,
now?
I absolutely do. And there are constraints for those who are going to live here.
Right. So you're going to have to monitor it, that's for sure.
Yep. Yep.
So my other question was about storage. So when you go to an extended stay, America, or whatever it was called, for a month, you're bringing 2 suitcases with you, that's it. If I'm going to live there, I'm bringing everything I own. I know you have bike storage, that's fine. What I'm
think-
saying is, you can see people having stuff all around the buildings, out on the little lawn areas they have, because they can't fit everything in their one-bedroom apartment.
Right. I think,
That's the only storage you have is for the bikes?
no. Go
Okay.
ahead.
No, one of the things that we do then is we go in, and usually it's at part of the clubhouse area with the gatehouse, and convert that to storage that they are able then to rent, for extra items.
Yep.
Because we're very particular about it, and we don't want it looking any different or any worse than, it does now. So that's something that we monitor very closely.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thanks, Ken. Ken?
Are some of those parking spaces reserved for the gate, the office? Like for people just to park, to come in and to pay bills or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, there is some management. I think it's one person, and we have space for that. That would be working there.
Our manager's on site.
Yeah, the manager is on site living there and occupying one of the units, so that would be the parking space. That would go with that unit.
So there's like is there any spaces for emergency vehicles? I guess there should be places right now with the
Right.
existing hotel where emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I have no other questions.
Thanks, Ken. Corinne?
Yes, I have a few questions. Did you ever consider, instead of having 72 studios, did you ever consider combining a couple studios and having more one-bedrooms? That way it would ease the parking a little bit, and you would have one-bedrooms. I really don't see studio apartments as being that attractive for people.
Oh, they are.
We do always go in and look at that, and look and see kind of where the market is and what else is offered in the market. What we've found is, first off, for the demographic that we're looking at, and usually like these younger professionals, and the studios are usually the first things that end up going in all of our properties that we have. Now, our one bedroom are not a lot different than the studios. They're a tad bit larger, but for the most part, all they are is a studio with a wall across, where the bedroom is. Generally, what we have not done is, sometimes other municipalities have asked and said, well, maybe put a couple of them together and make them 2 bedrooms. And it's just with the way that these are generally built, it's really, really difficult and very costly to be able to do that. So it is something, though, that we always go in and look at and study what the market seems to be doing at the time and what is required and needed in the market, and then just based on our past experience in our other properties. I will tell you, just as far as the parking, because in every type of board that we go in front of, in every city and town and municipality, the parking question always comes up, because you have, what has traditionally been a hospitality property, a hotel property, and you're converting it over to multifamily, and most towns are not unlike yours that have, traditionally had a higher parking ratio and parking requirement for multifamily. What we're finding in all of our other properties that are operating, and I think that's part of the thing that the parking engineers have also looked at, the traffic engineers, and also found, is that the generation of individuals that are living there usually have less cars, less number of cars. They rely on public transportation or ride sharing much more than any generation that we've ever had before. And we have always found that in properties exactly like this one, where there always has been a concern about parking, the parking demand in every situation has been less once that property is up and running. And I think it is just it's just a different generation that are starting to live here in the way that they, use their mobility and how they have cars and those types of things. So it is something we see with every property we take in front of similar boards. And there always is concerns about the parking. And up to about the 10 that we have operating right now, the parking has been less even than the parking studies have shown would be needed, and they've all been very comparable to the parking studies that's been presented here.
I just think the location of this makes it unusual, in that there's really nowhere to walk to when you're at this complex, and you abut 2 highways. So, walking anywhere, there's no public transportation, so some of your other properties might have different geography, different location where it is possible. And I also think the demographics that you're talking about, yes, they Uber on the weekends or whatever, but they're not going to Uber every time they leave, and they're not going to Uber back and forth to work. So I think the concern here is real.
Thank you, Corinne. I I think I can see your approach on the parking, but again, I agree with Ken in, you know, if I'm gonna rent an apartment here, you know, if I wanna have a guest, where are they parking? They certainly can't park on Route 95 or the 114 off-ramps. So, my question, Attorney McCann, would be, do you have a range on rents for these units?
Range. I know the affordable rents, but which would be dictated by the state and HUD guidelines. But I think it is really market-driven by when these would be ready. But the difference between market rate and the affordable units does run about a $600 a month difference at this present time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I do not have additional questions. I think they're more on the comments side. I think everybody's kind of hammered it enough with the parking. I think Corinne asked it, and the answer is no, that you can't convert some of these units to have less. I'm sure the numbers may not work in your favor, but I don't know how to create more parking on the spot. So I think that's the number one concern for me. And now that that's thrown in our lap and not the planning department, that concerns me. But any additional questions from the board before I go out to the public? Anybody here would like to speak on 48 Cranebrook Drive about this project? Yep, straight back.
Good evening. My name is Greg Solentano. I'm actually the general manager at the Costco in Danvers at 11 Newberry Street. And I would, and it was brought up by several of the board members, I would request that our engineers be able to take a look at the full scope of the project, including the parking and traffic flows, to address some of the concerns. Because I certainly would have concerns about what was actually brought up would be, you know, guest parking, as well as additional parking for multiple people maybe being in each of the units. So I would, you know, respectfully request that our engineers would have opportunity to review the traffic flow and the parking potential issues there.
And Greg, just to be clear, this board's here to grant or deny a use variance. This would go to the planning board after this, and that would probably be more addressed at that board.
Yes.
But the parking is a concern now.
Sure.
For us as well, apparently.
Well, he's addressing the
Yeah.
parking, and that's us.
Yep.
That's not planning.
Well, I don't know how we get him involved with engineering, though. I mean, I don't know if that's, maybe I'll go to Georgia on that. Is that something we can request of the town?
Requesting time. Have him talk to Nancy.
Yeah, it sounds like he wants to review the plans they've submitted, so I'm happy to email them tomorrow morning.
Does that
or you can talk with
suffice?
Nancy.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
I'm happy to email you the plans that were submitted with the application, but in terms of the board's action, waiting for just one person's review, I'll leave that up to.
You'd like to review the existing plan they're putting forward?
We would like, yes, I'd like
Okay.
to have our engineers the opportunity to review the existing plan. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Very good,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Bradstreet?
Again, Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. There's been a lot of discussion about parking. Does handicap parking come into play here?
They have handicap on site, and it's
I didn't hear
quantified.
it, I didn't hear it mentioned before.
Yeah, it's
why
that, that's
I'm
required, so they can't not have it.
asking. Just asking.
What's that?
I'm just asking. I didn't hear it
Yeah.
brought up, so that's why I'm asking. Thank you.
You're welcome. Currently, I believe 4, is that right?
I don't think it's required for housing.
Yeah, we have parking spaces as may be required, but when you do parking calculations, parking spaces and handicap parking spaces are all parking spaces.
Yep. Okay.
Mr. Duggan?
Anyone else from the public? Yeah. Attorney McCann, before Mr. Duggan speaks, but I do see here on the chart, it says 96 standard for handicap, and that's out of the 96, but it then says total 98, so something doesn't make sense to me. Simple math tells me that's 100. Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
There's supposed to be 96, but they have 2 extra.
Well, that's under existing, right? Okay, I'm just curious. If I found you 2 more spots, maybe that helps, I don't know. Not much. Mr. Duggan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Matthew Duggan, 41 Chase Street. I'm just trying to understand, before I delve into a couple of other questions, the lay of the land. So this Cranebrook Drive, is that a public way or a private way? And I ask because if there's overflow onto that, you know, we're talking about violators being.
Yeah, I believe it's private, but I'll let Attorney McCann answer that.
It's private.
And also the other properties right along that roadway, like what do the owners look like for that parcel, for those parcels?
It's shown on the plan, and I believe that is correct, that it's a private road. It's a subdivision roadway.
Yeah, so it's kind of part of the campus of Costco, the hardcover, I believe Fridays, and it's kind of at the tail end of that. There is no other way to access that site except through an entrance on Route 1.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, I'm familiar with the property, so I'm just
yeah.
concerned because earlier I heard a comment that the Danvers Police Department will be in charge of, you know, enforcing any type of, you know, parking restrictions. That the police department is not going to go onto private property, and this is for those owners there are going to have to deal with it. If you approve this 1 parking space per unit, I mean, that's their issue to deal with.
Yeah, and
you're
I
spot
think they.
on. There's no place to park. You can't park out on. It's literally abuts a state highway, a federal highway, and a federal.
Yeah, no, I
interstate.
agree with you, but the applicant has said how they would manage it. They would manage
Well,
it through their
that's-
management.
It's wishful thinking, I think, and also to compare it to the character-based zoning districts that we have in the square. I mean, that's apples and oranges. You can't say that downtown, there's, people mentioned additional parking. You actually literally don't need a car because you can walk just about any place you need to go to, food store, town hall, wherever. I just don't, I don't see realistically how 1 spot per unit is going to be,
Yeah.
how it would be realistic.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment from the public? Hearing none, we'll come back to the board and deliberate. I believe I started with you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see a huge advantage to this developer taking over this property and not letting it fall into disrepair. It's operated as a hotel with 96 spaces without any problem, and I would take it on the applicant's word that they could police it and only rent to people with 1 or 0 cars, and so I would approve this.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky?
I love the concept. We need the housing. I drove through the property. It's well-maintained. It looks great. but I can't approve it unless we can figure out parking.
Thank you, Becky. Ken?
I too like the concept. If that's what we're going with, one unit, one parking space per unit, so be it. I don't have to live there. I don't have to police it. I'll vote for it.
Thank you, Ken. And Ken?
Well, the conundrum is obviously the parking, and it's the visitor thing that I have an issue with. It could be chaos. I mean, maybe it will go good, but there's a lot of potential issues and stuff, I would say. You just never know. So, I mean, people are going to want to have people come over. There's boyfriends, there's girlfriends, there's different things. And the way it's located, like Kareen said, was, it's not local to public transit. And there's really nowhere to walk. Like, you sort of landlocked. So I would vote no on this.
Thank you, Ken. Kareen?
For all of the reasons my fellow members stated, I agree with the concept. I think it's great. I think you need to rework it. I think there needs to be more parking because there's nowhere else for these people to park. And Costco has issues with their own parking. They don't have enough parking for their own customers, so, trying to, I guess, either rent or take spaces from them isn't doing anyone any good. It will just make it even more of a nightmare there. So I think it's a good concept, but you need to rework it and deal with the parking issues.
Yeah, this is a tough one because normally we don't dive into parking, but in this case, we're being asked to. And I don't feel comfortable pushing this on to the planning board and then having them say, well, this doesn't make sense. However, I agree. I think it's a very similar use to what is there now. And if the applicant's going to police it on their own, I do think the site is somewhat flawed for this application, though, because this isn't even like, I think the applicant mentioned bikes, and, you can't even though the bike trail, I don't believe, is very far from this location, there's no way to even get a bike over there. And it's not a walking-friendly site, and I kind of remember back some time ago, a applicant trying to convert an industrial park use into residential, and I think, those types of problems existed there, but that, I think, was a different animal. But I still look at this as a problem, but I would vote for it, but you don't have the votes currently. I would say this, though, I don't know how you're gonna create more parking. I think you need to, and if that means changing the makeup of the units, and creating maybe a few less units to squeeze a few more parking spots, I'm not sure how the math would work out,
Tear
but.
down a building.
But I am a
Get rid of one of
yes,
the
but you do not have the votes currently,
there's
so
ways
what
to
would you
do
like
it.
to do?
Yeah. It wouldn't be ashamed to have this thing
Yeah.
fall foul out.
Thank you. I think what we would like to do is to continue for 4 weeks, to give us some time to see if we can find some magic spaces somewhere, or to do something, or perhaps we would be able to have our parking consultant, Nelson Nygaard, even possibly here at the next meeting, to discuss parking and the calculations and how they work, and why using one parking spaces for a studio or for a one-bedroom, even in this location, actually is more the norm. It is unusual, I will tell you, for a zoning bylaw to require 2 parking spaces for a studio.
It's a shame not to approve this.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
shame. It really is. And
I would
I
agree.
think we're all on board with that.
So we would request a continuance until your meeting of, second meeting in September?
September 26th, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay. I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you
Okay,
very
we'll
much.
see you 9/26.
It's like a great idea.
Give me 1 second, Ken.
But a traffic consultant is not going to convince anybody.
I own 12 windows. I know how many cars there are.
You have 24 cars there.
Oh, my God. I is there 20 of them? I know how many.
I have both drawings up, so if you want me to switch over, just let me know.
So just keep the site plan up.
Okay.
Let's go.
All set?
And our last app for the evening.
Our last case is 500 Locust Street, zoned R3. Request for a dimensional variance from Table 2 of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow the construction of a new 24-foot by 32-foot garage with a side setback of 15.5 feet where 20 feet is required. Request is made by Nick, forgive me,
Schwartzlag.
Schwartzlag. Thank you. Docket 22-4994.
I'm just gonna call you Nick.
That is fine. Good evening.
Nick, thanks for hanging in there with us tonight. Tell us what you'd like to do.
All right, so currently we have a single bay garage. We can actually go back to the pictures on the drawing. A single bay garage connected to the house with a breezeway. It is a very tight garage. You can barely fit a single vehicle in there, and it's connected to the house by a breezeway, all of which is in disrepair. The family, the resident, I'm representing Alex and Mitra Perel, would like to extend that garage, tear it down, rebuild a new one to house a mudroom with 2 bays for them to both park their vehicles in and then access the house through the mudroom. Currently, they're parking on the driveway. They're unable to park inside the garage, and they don't really have direct access into the house. So this extension, it's R3 zone with a 20-foot setback, and with this new construction, extending it to 32 feet off the main house, we're looking at 16.5 and 15.5 foot from the property line versus the 20-foot required for R3. So we're kind of just extending about 3.5 feet in the back corner, 4.5 feet in the front corner, maintaining within, 15 foot, which is what's required in R2. We also have letters from the neighbors approving this as well.
Oh, wait a minute, we approve it. They're in favor.
They're in favor, I'm sorry.
Okay. Just wanna make sure I'm in the right place. All right, that's about the extent of it.
That is it.
Thank you, Nick. Kareen, let's start with you.
I do not have any questions, thank you.
Thanks. Ken?
I have no questions.
Ken?
No questions, but we did have a letter in support from Jay Ash of 498 Locust.
Very good, thank you.
He's the abutter immediately
Yeah.
to the side.
Right.
And Becky?
I have no questions.
Jeff?
I have no questions.
It seems pretty straightforward to me. And I too don't have, I guess, I always ask this question, but, so no storage above this garage, or is it gonna add to the second floor of this building at all?
The proposal is for an unfinished room above with the possibility to finish it at a later date. They have a growing family, they're moving towards retirement, their kids are getting older, there may be grandchildren in the near future.
Okay.
So it's left unfinished for now with the possibility of turning it into a guest room.
Okay. All right, go out to the public. Anyone here on 500 Locust Street? Thank you. Kareen, go down, we'll deliberate down there with you.
I will vote for this.
Thank you. Ken?
I'll vote for this too.
And Ken?
I will vote for this.
Becky?
I will vote for this.
And Jeff?
I will vote for this.
And I too don't see a problem with this. It's a nice little spot you've got there, I think. Looks like it will be very much in keeping. So could I get a motion, please?
For 500 Locust Street, I move to issue a dimensional variance from Table 2 of the Danvers zoning bylaw to allow the creation of a new 24 by 32 garage with a side setback of 15.5 feet where 20 feet is required, as shown on the plan submitted by the applicant. The hardship is the location and size of existing structures on the lot. This condition does not affect other properties or structures in the same zoning district. A literal enforcement of the zoning bylaw would involve substantial hardship to the applicant, and granting this variance will not create a substantial detriment to the public good and will not nullify or derogate from the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw.
I will second that.
Thank you and thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Good luck.
Good luck. See the planning department. They'll get you squared away with your paperwork.
Thank you for hanging in
Motion
there.
to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, Danvers.
Night, Danvers.